Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority to the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte in the State of California to order. The Solid Waste Management Authority to the City of Crescent City is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at assigned time. All items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate public and staff availability. So we can move right into, we can have a private roll call. Thank you. And we'll begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like to lead it, Lynn?
Absolutely. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comment. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter that is on or off of the agenda. After receiving recognition from the chair, please state your name for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move into the open session items and begin with consent. It's items 1.1 through 1.4. Any discussion on any public comment on the consent agenda?
If you could, I'd like to pull item 1.2 for additional information.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? Is there a motion for approval pulling 1.2?
I would so move.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes, the annual clean sweep program on May 31st and June 1st, and a budget transfer of $7,920. Poll vote, please.
Commissioner Naffa.
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau.
Yes.
Commissioner McClure.
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Director Treasurer's report.
Well, on item 1.2,
sorry.
the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte Chamber of Commerce have requested 2 authority-directed bin pulls and waiver of disposal fees associated for July 4th. And we've clarified, and what they're looking for is essentially the same thing they asked for last year, which is 2 bin pulls plus parade route carts. They like 11 pairs of solid waste and recycling carts along the parade route, so people with bottles and cans can recycle those. So it ends up being 3 authority allocated bin pulls, and staff recommend approval of that.
Any discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the request from the City of Crescent City and the Del Norte County Chamber of Commerce for 3 bin pulls. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we'll move to the Director Treasurer's report.
Staff continue to operate the Del Norte County Transfer Station, Klamath Transfer Station, and Gasky Transfer Station during posted hours without a penny of tax or direct financial support from either the City of Crescent City or the County of Del Norte, while maintaining the lowest disposal rates for any solid waste facilities in Humboldt, Curry, or Del Norte counties. I'd like to introduce Kayleen Warner as now Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority's permanent Facilities and Programs Coordinator, effective June 1st. One of the learning experiences of this process has been that 6 months is actually not enough time to train a person in all of the aspects of this duty. We probably have another 3 or 4 additional months of training before we've covered all the bases. So if Kayleen would like to say anything, she's welcome to do so. Okay. I just wanted to let the board know. She's become a valuable member of our staff, and even now I don't want to think about doing without her. So let's see, other things that happened. I apologize for the brevity of the director's report this round. We were really pushing on all the agenda items up until the last minute, so I didn't have the time I usually do. We did replace one more load cell for the outbound scale, and that additional expense will be less than the amount we still have budgeted in that line. We have in the director's report attached a thank you note from Bill Patterson of the Yurok tribe regarding the Klamath River cleanup. It continues to be really an outstanding cleanup event. They had over 200 volunteers. They collected 9.7 tons of trash, 4.4 tons of metal, 58 tires, 12 quarts of motor oil, 9 refrigerators, 9 appliances, 5 furniture, and 4 mattresses. And a good time was had by all. So, but really a tremendous cleanup effort that the Yurok tribe coordinates there. The union negotiations have concluded, and they'll be discussed in closed session. And coming up this June 4th will be the first free mattress collection event in Del Norte County history. That's Saturday, June 4th from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. And on that day, Del Norte County residents may dispose of up to 4 mattresses or box springs for no charge. Oregon customers or people who bring in more than 4 mattresses will be charged regular rates. This one-day event is the first of 3 such mattress collection events this year, with the next one scheduled for the day of our household hazardous waste collection event for September 10th. So this is a very full agenda, so I'd just like to give you a bullet point list of some of the major things we'll be discussing. At today's meeting, the board will be making some very significant decisions addressing customer rates for the coming year at the Del Norte County Transfer Station in Klamath and Gasky, and for collection customers. The board will be deciding to initiate textile recycling daily at the Del Norte County Transfer Station starting August 1st. We'll have initial discussions regarding a letter from Julindra Recycling indicating their interest in reducing the variety of plastics that can be recycled in Del Norte County. We'll discuss the possible extension of the transfer station operations agreement with Hambro WSG by an additional 12 years. We'll discuss Rate Ordinance 2016-01, which makes several rate changes effective starting August 1st, 2016. We'll adopt the budget for the coming fiscal year. We'll discuss possible changes to the Joint Powers Agreement governing this agency. And in closed session, we'll be discussing the recently concluded union negotiations for the MOU with the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority's Employees Union covering the next 3 years. So that's what we have up ahead, and with the chair's permission, I'd be happy to move along to the financial reports.
Perfect.
Okay. Looking at the financial reports, our cash balance currently is $793,781 plus $198,177 set up for the last transfer station loan payment. Regarding claims approved by director, the largest payment was to Hambro WSG, as usual, for transfer station operations. And included in the claims approved is a final payment to Richard B. Davis for completing a landfill survey, which I plan on including on next month's agenda. And looking at the regular financial reports, looking at the revenue reports specifically, the authority's fees are at the transfer stations are 1.66% ahead of budget. So currently we're $14,067 ahead of what we projected to have budgeted at this point in time for the year. And franchise fees are 7.7% ahead of budget, and currently we're $16,899 ahead of budget with regards to franchise fees. That concludes the financial reports.
Are there any questions on the financial report?
You said 1.6% of budget,
Ahead of budget, yes.
ahead of budget.
Yeah.
And that's basically from tipping fees.
That's from our portion of the tipping fees, yes.
And the franchise fees, how does that operate to get you that percent ahead?
The franchise fees are defined to be 10% of gross revenue less disposal fees. And so if Recology is having gross profit that's increasing ahead of the previous year, then the franchise fees go up and our revenue from that line goes up. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We don't need an action on this?
No, no actions are required. Those are for information only.
So are we moving on to the,
3.1?
mhm.
Okay. This is really good news. We have the draft report back from Lawrence and Associates doing the water quality analysis of the residential well sampling. And the bottom line is that the residential wells that we sampled have good water quality, and they meet all of the guidelines one would expect for residential drinking water. And based on that analysis and the analysis that's contained in the report, Lawrence and Associates is recommending that instead of being a 1A threat and complexity rating, that we be dropped to a 2B threat and complexity rating. So truly the question is to be or not to be?
You couldn't help yourself.
I couldn't, sorry.
Dennis Burns used to be the best.
Sorry about that. But it is really good news, because if the Regional Water Quality Control Board agreed to that, then our annual permit fees would drop from $70,781 to $25,502, which is an annual savings of $46,279. So this would be a huge step forward in terms of our fiscal health and what I consider to be a more appropriate permit fee for this facility. This past year, the authority has paid the amount for a 2A rating, though the landfill was assessed at a permit fee for 1A, leaving an unpaid balance, at least according to the State Water Resources Control Board, of $26,566. We've been told that this amount would be referred to a collection agency, but we have not yet heard from the collection agency or received a final determination from the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff. So at this point, it's kind of a status report. We've already submitted this report that's included in your agenda, and we have high hopes for a positive result, but haven't heard from them yet.
Does Lawrence and Associate, do they have a good working relationship with the water board?
They do, and they've been, and Bonnie Lampley has been really great to work with throughout.
Okay, good. Mr. Howard?
Is there a lower rating than the 2B?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there a lower rating than 2B?
Yeah, we could potentially be a 3B, but I don't, because the water quality engineer has recommended 2B, I don't anticipate any lower than that, and I wouldn't entirely be surprised if Regional Water Quality Control Board staff suggests that we be a 2A.
What would the reasoning be for 2A versus going lower?
It's hard for me to put words in her mouth. These are qualitative assessments, and so it's really her, Gina Morrison's judgment as supported by her overseeing staff.
Is it a negotiated process?
No, not really. It's a long and sordid history, but the bottom line is this threat and complexity rating was established before they used it as a basis for assessing fees. And then when they had a budget shortfall because the state was no longer paying them out of the general fund revenues, then they used this threat and complexity rating as the basis for assessing fees. For folks like our agency, it's very hard to have a fee assessed by a qualitative scale. It's as if someone were to charge me a fee based on how ugly they thought I was. It's like, it's a value judgment.
Any other questions?
Depending on what the response is, sorry.
No, you're good.
Depending on what the response is to the report, do you anticipate us being able to appeal it depending on the decision that's made?
That is an excellent question. And throughout this process, since we started the appeal, which I think was like back in 2012, we've been frustrated because there is no clear appeal process at all. In that, and it's doubly confusing in that the fees are collected by the State Water Resources Control Board, but the threat and complexity rating is assessed by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So it has not been a clear process for appeal, and we've stuck with it throughout, but it's always been a bit dicey and unclear.
But we think that Gina is working with us because she was the one that suggested that maybe if we did the water sampling and it came out good, that she could lower the threat. And I think it's primarily because we don't have a liner, under. It was built without a liner, which would, all of the dumps that were built at that time were built without liners.
And the complexity, since the 1A, the first part of that is the threat, The second part of that is the complexity. And so Ms. Morrison has continued to assert that assessing the groundwater movement underneath the landfill is complicated because there are two water-bearing zones and they're separated by a marsh deposit of varying thickness. And it's not exactly separate water-bearing zones, but it's kind of like an aquitard. It slows the movement of the water from one water-bearing zone to the other. Aquitard. It slows the water. So, anyway, that is part of her assessment as to why this is a relatively complex site. But now at least we have a water quality engineer saying that she believes we are more appropriately rated as a 2B rather than a 1A. And while I have asserted that before in the past, it's always helpful having a water quality engineer make that assertion.
It was scary money that when we said, let's do the testing and hire the engineer, because we weren't sure. Any further discussion?
We just have one question. Ted, in the water quality report makes reference to well 2 as being the only one showing any increase in the dissolved solids, and then made a recommendation to possibly examine that with a camera to find out if that casing is cracked, so that we can, I mean, my thought is if that's not really increasing, but it's a well that has failed, is that on the radar for something that we're going to proceed with? Because obviously, if all the rest of these are not showing increases and we have this one well, it would really be nice to be able to say, well, that's because this well has failed, the casing has failed. It's not a result of the landfill. I'm just looking forward to how this is evaluated down the road, because this one well is showing increase when nothing else is. So I just
we will certainly pursue that, and the county has a camera that can be used for that. We've partnered with them before, and we will definitely inspect that casing. It wouldn't surprise me at all if part of Ms. Morrison's response to this report is a requirement that we do so.
Okay. Good. Awesome. Good news.
So, moving right along to the collections franchise,
Okay.
4.1.
4.1, this is the annual financial statement we received from Recology Del Norte as specified in our agreement. Without this financial reporting, we really wouldn't have any means of knowing that during the past year, Recology Del Norte, as indicated on page 4, transferred $355,201 to the parent company in San Francisco. That represents a 7.8% profit, but it's good to know that, as this agency is responsible for the management of that contract and to make sure that the community is getting a good value, which I believe they are for the collections contract and the prices that are charged. It's always good to know how profitable the various businesses are. We, of course, want them to be successful and want them to be profitable, but it's also worth asking, is this the best deal? So no further action is actually required on this item. It's other than to receive and file.
Any questions?
Well, not to be a hard ass, but that money does leave the community. I think that was the whole crux of the discussions back when all this stuff was going out to bid many years ago, before my time on the bench. But you said 7.8%? That's a nice, healthy return. Nice, healthy return. How much of that stays in the community? I'd love to hear from Jeremy on the investment back in the community, that piece of it, because I know I see him at the fishing derbies contributing. Like to hear more of that what stays piece.
Afternoon, Jeremy Herber, General Manager for Recology. The parent distribution, this came up last year. This is still fairly new for me. That is not here's my understanding. It is not an actual transfer of profitability. There's some other situations involved with that that's not just profit margin. There's some transfers due to some truck leases that goes to a leasing company through us. So it's not all profit at 7.8%. If there is questions of that, I would be more than happy to reach out. We have a super smart accountant that's way above my level that has all this dialed in. If there's any questions that you guys would love more information on, we'd be happy to provide that on the true breakdown of how that really happens, if that's a question. As for that, so that's what came up last year, because there was even a larger number last year, and that was a, hey, what is this? And I think there was a response from Ed Farewell in response to say, that's not exactly what it looks like on paper in true life. So I just wanted to throw that out to you, that there is a profit margin there, but it's not at that rate. Second of all, as for the community, obviously at Recology, we love to give back to the community, and we're doing a lot of that. We're doing a lot of memorial with the Veterans Memorial. We're involved with a new charity house that's starting. We're going to go ahead and get involved in that, try to get that kicked off. And multiple other events around the community we like to attend and do a lot of donations, whether it's trash, sometimes it's financial. So obviously, a big portion of us is to give back to the community that we serve. So, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I guess the follow-up would be if you do have the opportunity to speak to the accountant, what is the true margin then you're looking at?
Absolutely. I will definitely make that a notation and get that number for you.
And I personally do appreciate seeing you guys out there in the community and at specifically all the fundraising events that I'm at. So it's
Yeah,
appreciated.
we try. I mean, obviously that we get a lot more demand than we can probably keep up with. So we try to pick and choose the ones that are really important for the community, and we'll continue to do so.
Fair enough.
Any other questions? And there's no action required. Okay, moving on. 4.3.
4.2
Oh, sorry.
is Change Order 8, which enacts the rate changes that are associated with the disposal rate changes and the changes to the Consumer Price Index. Those will be further items for discussion as the meeting continues. Recology's collection customers will see a 0.73% increase in disposal rates starting August 1st, 2016. So if you check the rate sheets at the end of the director's report, you'll see that the basic 32-gallon rate for trash and recycling goes from $25.42 per month to $25.61 per month, a 19-cent increase per month. Weekly collection rate for a 2 cubic yard bin increases from $249.38 to $251.20. So again, relatively small increases, all under, at least for Recology, all associated with the changes to the Consumer Price Index and controlled by the agreements we already have in place. So staff recommend approval that the board adopt Change Order 8 and authorize appropriate signatures.
Any public discussion on this item? How about I'll bring it back to the board.
The rate reductions that we saw last year with Recology, does this bring them back up to where they were, or how did that work?
It brings them a little bit ahead of where they were 2 years ago.
Just a little bit, okay. Very good.
But that is all based on the math of the changes to the Consumer Price Index. So if it goes down one 12-month cycle, it may go up the next 12-month cycle, and that's all factored in.
So the rate reduction was based on that Consumer Price Index?
Exactly.
Change. Okay, interesting.
What was the, did we use the CPI that just ended in March?
Yes, that's correct.
Good.
Need a motion? Motion to approve.
There's been a motion to approve the collection change order number 8. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Gastineau.
Yes.
Commissioner McClure.
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa.
Yes.
Good. Okay, 4.3. That is such a drag.
Excuse me. Julie Badarek, General Manager for Julindra Recycling, is requesting that Julindra cease receiving and processing styrofoam, both block and peanuts, plastic bags and shrink wrap, cartons, plastics number 4 through 7, and miscellaneous electronics. As there are several provisions in our agreement with Recology which have bearing on this decision, staff recommend the appointment of an ad hoc committee to discuss and formulate recommendations on this issue.
Any public discussion on this item? Julie, would you like to come to the,
My name is Julie Bedorik, and I'm the current general manager of Julindra Recycling. I just need everybody to know that this was a situation where, after being in there for 3 months, looking at everything and seeing the state of things, it became quickly evident that we needed to take some action sooner than later. I can tell you that when prices dropped several years ago, a lot of the other products covered these items that pay nothing, but are labor intensive and freight charges. When everything else dropped, the ability to absorb those just completely went away, and it's been draining and draining and draining the company. I know in my heart, after speaking to people, Dad was ready. I think he had maybe more emotional issues about coming forward and saying, I can't do this anymore. I don't have those issues. But we just can't do it anymore. And they're extremely labor intensive. They pay $0. They are a pain to process. I could go on and give a list. That's better left for an ad hoc committee, I believe. I just need you to know that this needs to be addressed very quickly, sooner than later. I know that perhaps there's issues with public perception problems. I'm willing to deal with that, take the hit for that 100%. I'm devoting an advertising budget for the sake of that. I'm not worried about it. I just would like to see this not get bogged down in too much political maneuvering. I realize there is a process that needs to be observed, and I respect the process, but I do ask that you give it your utmost quick consideration. Okay? Thank you.
any other public comment?
Elizabeth Henry, county resident. I guess I have more of a question. As I was looking through the figures, it's kind of astounding the amount of garbage. I'm assuming that's garbage that came in with the recycling that was from the bins. And I wonder if there isn't a way to work on reducing that. I think the total's in 70% is recyclable, but that seems like there's a lot of garbage. And whether I have to review actually frequently if I'm recycling anything different, how to prepare it and how to put it in the bin. And I think it would really be helpful to have a real public outreach on that and education, because I'm sure they're getting those blue bins full of all kinds of things, and either they're not bundled and things fly all over, which I'm sure creates a problem when they're trying to separate things. So I wonder if that couldn't be part of the effort now, since this is so that people don't think we're kind of giving up on recycling or whatever, that we're still developing and trying to do a better job. So thank you.
Any other public comment? Bring it back to the board for discussion.
Is the spreadsheet that goes over these figures that Julie's reporting, is this in tons or pounds? Pounds. Yeah, I honestly hate to see it go. I utilize that piece a lot, an incredible amount, especially with the hard plastics. I think obviously going to a committee to find a potential solution. Is this state mandated for the collection of this?
There are several different provisions of the contract that cover this, and we also have a processing agreement requirement in the franchise collection agreement that specifies a number of the sections of the agreement between Recology and Julindra. So I think really the reason why staff are recommending that we form an ad hoc committee is there's lots of details that I would like the commissioners who are in a decision-making role to understand before we move forward, because it's not entirely clear, and it's a number of things to navigate, both what is best for the community, what's best for our partners who are trying to make the programs work in light of our current environment. But we don't want anybody to be losing money, and we hesitate very strongly to stop any recycling stream, because it's very difficult to both promote people's behavior that encourages recycling, trying to get them into the habit, support that recycling habit, and then change it. It's an action that should be taken with much consideration, and at very least trying to find out the best way to follow through on people's good intentions to try to recycle those materials. So even if any of these materials are eventually decided that we're going to drop them from our recycling stream, then at very least we would want to inform the public as to what is the best thing to do with those materials. But that's part of a larger discussion.
Any other questions?
As far as the agreement with Recology versus Julindra here, does this mean that this stuff still goes through Recology, but it's just not going to go to Julindra?
That's an excellent question. As you point out, the authority's agreement is with Recology. We have a third-party beneficiary agreement in that Julindra has an agreement with Recology, and Recology has an agreement with Julindra to process the commodities that are collected through our system. But we don't have a direct agreement with Julindra. So that's the context for this request. While Julindra is putting forth this request to the authority, it's actually between their agreements, but it has an impact on the authority's programs.
And so otherwise, if Julindra is not taking this stuff on from Recology, the assumption is that some of these things will find a different home through Recology?
That is one possible option. It would be possible, for instance, for the authority board to assert this particular material or these sets of materials, we're going to continue to make sure that they get recycled under our program, and then Recology would have to find a processor for those materials.
Thanks. Thank you.
But again, this is a lot of contingency and what ifs, and we really need to get down to the brass tacks of discussing what are the parameters in our agreements, where's our flexibility, and how the board sees moving forward is the best way.
Right, because these items are called out in the contract, in the agreement with Recology.
Certainly some of them are.
Right. So those,
Just taking for one example, the miscellaneous electronics, for instance, I don't think there's any concern in dropping that program, because it's, while it may be an inconvenience for Recology, we accept consumer electronic devices at the Delaware County Transfer Station every day. So there's a home for that. It's really discussing the other materials that become somewhat more problematic.
What's the percentage that arrives at Julindra Recology pickup versus what gets delivered directly to Julindra? Do we have an idea of that?
We can look that up. I don't have that on hand.
75% versus 25%. So I, as a self-hauler, drive my 4s and 5s directly to Julindra to recycle because I don't have a Recology pickup. You know, what percentage is coming directly from Recology, I guess, to Julindra to sort?
That's a tough one. I would probably say we're probably looking at about 70% of the material coming into that facility is going to be through us. The rest will be from community drop-off of some sort. We've been addressing, as well as Elizabeth had talked about earlier, was the conditions of some of the community bins are really used more for a trash dump than they are for recycling. our diversion rate shouldn't be over 10%. Unfortunately, it is, and it's not because of, I mean, we have people that specialize, Lori Poole especially, she's our community liaison. She's out there every day letting people know this is what's recyclable, this is what's not. We do educational and outreach programs. There's a difference of people that really care and want to follow through with it, and there's others that just don't. No matter how much we do community education, there's just some people that just don't care. And the majority of that comes through our community bins that are more trash. The diversion rate is just a little higher than it should be. Really, I think, obviously, Recology is really large in recycling. We're really big about that. We want to push that in all of our communities. There's a logistic problem with, of course, where we're at. Second of all, Del Norte County tends to take a lot more recyclables than even Humboldt or most of these other larger communities. They don't even take majority of this stuff. Where this came about, my understanding is when Jordan was around, he really wanted to do the community a big favor by taking this material. He wasn't doing himself a favor business-wise by doing such. He did it for the love of the community. The problem is and I understand where Julie's coming from, and this is why we're trying to support her in this, is that if, in order for her to continue business and make enough money to pay those bills and those employees that work for her, this material is just really affecting her. Obviously, we are responsible for all the recyclable material coming through. There's options that can be taken to probably move this stuff if we really had to. Unfortunately, it probably wouldn't be exactly what would be best for the community. And so, in conjunction with this, we're trying to figure out a way to keep this material moving through Jalindras and still find a home for it that's still environmentally friendly as best as possible. Any other questions?
What did you mean that it wouldn't be best for the community?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes where if this material, if we still need to be responsible for collecting for it, obviously we don't want to run it through the landfill. And for me to try to move it out of here, I'm not sure how I would have to do that. In order for me to be able to move that material out of here to make it where it's feasible for us, it might be best if I moved it all. And that's all the recyclable material, in order to make sure that that profitability for us stays there too. And that's really not what we want to do, because that's not really benefiting the community. So I would really, now this is something, this is just me speaking. We haven't gone into the analysis or anything. We haven't needed to at this point. The big point for us here would be to support Jalindras, support the community, and continue to leave that stuff here and try to find, hopefully, alternate sources to keep this material moving locally.
Yeah, it's a mess, and
It's a tough one.
I don't know if we should possibly reach out to RCRC and talk to them about what other rural communities that are kind of pushing up against this, what they've done. Because I think that if we stop it, it will never happen again. People will just start going back to their old ways. And I also wonder, do we need a different design on our containers for the trash not being able to be put into the recycling containers so easily?
Yes, we've...
Like a different door, because right now, the big trash door, you can put your McDonald's junk in there, and you could put that same McDonald's junk into the other one.
Right. We've looked at the different door sizes as well. We've gone down, in fact, we've actually, from years past, the doors size have been reduced. So now if it doesn't fit, they just throw it on the ground, unfortunately. And my understanding, and I need to do some more research on this too, I'm still working on some alternate solutions as well to try to help this problem. But a lot of other, like we've checked with Humboldt and some of these other larger communities, a lot of these communities don't even take some of the stuff that Del Norte does.
You're telling me Humboldt doesn't take milk cartons and 4s and 5s?
I'm not saying, I don't have all, I'm not saying everything. What I'm saying
That's why we
is
needed
there's
ad hoc.
something.
That's why we
That
needed
is
ad hoc.
correct. So we need to look into this a lot further and come up with a solution of what we do as a community to get this fixed and still help Jalindras stay in business, so,
Okay.
okay.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to say, we do need to move on this as soon as possible, obviously, because even if we take the action that I don't think any of us really want, and that is put it back into the waste stream, it's going to take the public a long time to figure out it doesn't go there, which means that Julinder is going to continue to process this stuff, because it's going to be, even if we took it out, it's going to come there inappropriately for months. So we do need to get on this, and while it may sound like a huge amount, we're talking about 93,000 pounds.
Right.
Annually. That's right. How many tons do we send to the landfill every year, Wes? Tons. So we're talking about 93,000 pounds, even if we put all of it back in the waste stream. I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just saying that it is a very small fraction of what we have, but we need to have that ad hoc and look at all these. And sometimes you're stuck not being able to have the ideal solution, but you've got to do the workable solution for the community as a whole. And that's not easy, nor is it always popular.
Right, and the discussion might wrap around if we could get the tonnage down, what would
Yeah.
that mean? Because we may need to just start saying that the public bins, we're just taking them to the landfill because they're being so maligned.
Those are, that's
But
question.
like, mine is always like, everything's been washed, everything is tidy, you know, the newspapers are still in the plastic, and the other things are all free-flowing, and so I think there's lots of households
Yeah.
that are doing a very good job.
Yep.
And maybe that could be a pinch point that could relieve the amount, you know, so you wouldn't have to have so much that you couldn't get rid of. I don't know.
And I'll just jump in here because I think anybody watching this at home, for example, will naturally wonder, well, what can I do to help this situation? And the first thing to do is recycle right.
And read those direction cards.
Lift up your recycling lid of the blue cart, and you'll see a little sticker there explaining how to recycle. But one of the most important things is if you are recycling plastic bags, or if you're recycling junk mail that's been opened, or if you're recycling styrofoam, those all need to be in their own separate bags, tied shut, before they're put in the recycling bin. A lot of the reasons why these things are so expensive to process is that people are putting them in loose. You can just imagine putting in loose styrofoam peanuts into your recycling bin, and that really does not help the overall recycling system.
No, and they should be taking them to the mail, they should be taking them to the mail room because they reuse them. And then they send them away. Wes?
Yeah, Wes White with Hambro WSG. Try to give you somewhat of an independent view, not working for either Recology or for Julindra. If you look at the industry, because I follow the industry fairly closely, the industry trends has been towards, because of the drop in commodity prices, when the commodity prices were all great, everybody's obviously into it because they're making nice profits. If you look at the big four, the trend has been to move away from actually where the recycler takes nothing but the commodity and sells the commodity, and from that gets his or her profit. And Ted and I have talked about this as well. And during Jordan's decline and illnesses, we were concerned about how the community might be served, what was going to happen to Jolinda, and I told them that the only way that I would even consider, or Hambro, not me, would consider doing anything was if we had a processing fee and then somehow work out some kind of agreement on whatever the commodity pricing was. That takes away this volatility in the commodities. I'll throw that as an idea, as something that might be discussed. I don't want to throw the whole thing up in the air, but it's something to think about. And I certainly would confirm both what Elizabeth and Jeremy and Julie said about, you know, I don't see, and I didn't see, how Jolinda was making money on those commodities at the pricing they were. There is just no way I believe they can do it. So I'd like to confirm that. I'd also like to confirm that the amount of recyclables and the amount of trash that comes in to Julindra, the amount of trash is way too high compared to other communities. And the last thing I can confirm is that we do recycle more items than other communities. I'm not trying to make a judgment, it's good or bad, it's just a fact. Those are the facts. So it can be problematic trying to ship the materials out of here if for some reason, whatever happened, things didn't go well with Julindra, which I'm not suggesting because I want to support Julindra in any way we can. But there's two problems. One is the number of materials that we ship or that we currently accept. And the second thing is the contamination rate, because the contamination rate is way, way too high for somebody else to accept it. They simply will not do it. And then as Jeremy alluded to, logistics on top of that, when you're shipping trash and not shipping commodities, you got a bigger problem logistically than we have just because of our remoteness. So hopefully that lends a little, I don't know, whatever to it, but hopefully it adds something.
Thank you.
So who wants to be on an ad hoc committee?
It looks like you have 3 volunteers right there, and they're out in the audience.
No, I think that the ad hoc committee needs to be both entities, obviously, need to be at the table.
Yeah.
And our staff needs to be at the table, but we need commissioners at the table.
Look at me, I couldn't even make my last ad hoc committee.
Just to be clear, it is an alternate that you
For-
could just direct staff to proceed and come back with a detailed discussion about where we came up to, but it's an option. The reason staff are recommending that there be an ad hoc is this is certainly an issue of significant
Great
community
importance.
No, we
concern,
need to be involved.
and
Yes.
and I think it would be best.
You don't need to take the public heat for, that's our responsibility. So I'll be one volunteer.
Good.
You're almost out of school.
Yeah, but I'm actually taking classes for my beginning teacher stuff too, so not only this and my teaching, and I'm going to school. I am way too busy.
I'm just kidding.
I will be on it also, because I think we can be very creative and possibly figure out a solution, even if we decide to do one giant, massive art project in the community with all those plastic bags. I don't know. There you go, Ted's suit. I also think that we have the possibility of here to have Ted do the research on other recycling platforms in communities of like size, and figure out if there's a way that, we could sweeten the pot, so to speak, if there's a, like a grant assistance that could help manage the recycler, or if there's a company in town that's making money that wants to do grant assistance to the recycler. I don't know. I mean, I think we need to think out of the box and get creative.
7.8% worth?
No, I just think maybe,
Sorry, Jerry. Sorry.
we're just messing with you. No, but I just think it's going to need to be, what kind of timeline are we needing to be under?
Tomorrow?
Yeah, right.
I've done a lot of changes in-house, and I've made some cutbacks. I've done a redistribution of loads, changed the frequency. I'm managing that to a point to get the cash flow in a better place. But at the end of the day, what it came down to was he was losing money for 2 years and plugging it with personal income that no longer exists.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I'm not using my personal income to plug the holes. My husband would kill me. So it's a real thing. The biggest issue is labor is so high because of the manual separation and having to deal with it. got 10 people on 6 days a week to deal with this. It needs to come down. It just has to come down in order for it to be profitable. And I guarantee you, the conversations I had with the 2 places in Humboldt County, they laughed me off the phone saying, why in the world did you ever do that? I said, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. It's, you know, it's hard, it's hard. We know that there's going to be problems with people being upset about it because everybody likes the perception of doing it, but the reality of it is something completely different. Yes. I'm willing to put all of our advertising toward that and helping in that and taking the heat for that. I don't know what else. I mean, everything else, what I'd really like to see is the focus be on what we are still doing in the glass and the cardboard and the paper and the mixed paper and the aluminum and a lot. There's a lot that is still being done and taken out, and I'd like to focus and show the community what we are still doing and do that very, very well. And then when they see that Humboldt County won't take styrofoam, like he said,
Yeah, we can
there's
help.
no volume in it.
We can
He
help.
said to me, there's no volume in it, and I went, really?
And we can help.
It took us 3.5 years to get 1 load.
Yeah, so we can help deal with the public perception, I'm sure.
And that was after buying a new machine. It was not a good idea. So, you know, everybody loves the process and the whatever of recycling. I love it too. I do it all the time in Southern California as well as here. The reality of the business end of it is something completely different, and we're not in a large area. We don't take on enough volume in the other products to cover these things. So that's where it is. Okay? Thank you.
So we need to get on it as soon as possible, so you'll start.
Yep. And just the first meeting will be with ad hoc, just to review the contract provisions that apply to this situation.
Okay, moving on to 5.1.
5.1. This is good news. This is the contract amendment and side letter negotiated by Commissioners McClure and Inscore, coincidentally the ad hoc committee that was just reappointed to wear different hats, and prepared by our legal counsel, Martha Rice. This is a great deal for our community. Under the Public Resources Code, the authority is obliged to retain at least 15 years of disposal capacity. Under our current agreements, we have 11.8 years remaining before our transfer station operations agreement with Hambro WSG expires. And as you may recall, they have an agreement for disposal with Dry Creek Landfill, to which the authority is a third-party beneficiary. If approved, this extension would result in 23.8 years on both the transfer station operations agreements as well as the landfill disposal agreement, with only slight changes in the disposal fees based on changes to Oregon law. There's a 58 cents per ton increase this year and another 7 cent per ton increase next year. The side letter acknowledges that California has passed legislation that will increase the minimum wage statewide, and this will be the basis for future negotiation with Hambro WSG because it will impact their fees as well. So staff recommend approval of this contract amendment and side letter and authorization of appropriate signatures.
Chair, I'd make the motion to approve the First Amendment to the agreement between the Delaware Solid Waste Management Authority, Joint Powers Authority, and Hambro Waste Solutions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did that include the side letter?
Yes.
Any further discussion? I just think that we should, you know, make hay of this in relationship to assisting to get Hambros to be whole and the community to have a good contract. So we need to make hay of it. Do you have a comment?
Yeah. Wes White with Hambro WSG. First off, thank you for the potential vote of confidence. We appreciate it, and we.
That one will be today.
Yeah, I'm not assuming anything here. We want to assure you that your trust is well placed. There's a little bit of an issue, and that is with this contract calls for a July 1st CPI increase. If you'll notice, there's an August 1st increase for the CPI. When Ted initially called me about this problem, which was due to it requires an ordinance, as I understand it, to change the price due to the Oregon DEQ increasing the landfill cost by 58 cents a ton and then 7 cents next, which is a 90-day process. Dry Creek did not get us the letter until the April 4th, I believe, or 5th, which was after the 90 days would have taken effect. So that delayed that portion of it until an August 1st implementation. I've called Dry Creek. They understand the situation. They're fine on passing on the 58 cents and not receiving it for the month of July. Where my problem lies is the CPI increase. I just did roughly a 5-month average, and it roughly works out to a $2,000 loss for the month of July. So after talking to Ted came at me. I said, I'd like to implement the July 1st CPI and then separately the 58 cent increase for the DEQ in August. After he talked to Recology and he came back to me and explained to me what all was going on, I felt that it was in the community's best interest because Recology would have to send out two increases to all of their customer base. The Solid Waste Authority would have to publish 2 different increases, put up news signs and all of that. It was just too much of a hassle to do. So I just request that somehow you guys take a look at somehow reimbursing us for that. If you want, if not, we'll take the hit. But I did it in the community's best interest, and I hope you'll take that into consideration. If not, that's fine. We'll take the hit. So thank you. Again, we appreciate it very much.
What's your pleasure on that?
Do we need to deal with the motion that's currently in front of us before we address that?
Okay, let's do that. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Will you poll the vote, please?
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Regarding the comment Mr. White just made, first I do need to acknowledge it's a challenging thing to juggle all these things at the same time because when the disposal rate changes, that impacts Recology's rates. And so it really would be 2 rate changes over the period of 2 months, which is problematic for a number of reasons. In our agreement, it is specified that if there is a rate change proposal coming from the contractor, that's to be received by February 15th. Because if we need to, that gives time to adopt an ordinance and have it in place before July 1st. Because we didn't receive the letter until towards the beginning of April, we just didn't have the time on the calendar in order to adopt the ordinance that would be necessary to have the rates go into effect July 1st. So there wasn't a physical way to have us make this happen. Because anytime there's a new rate, there needs to be a rate ordinance, which essentially is a 90-day process at a minimum. So we can continue to look through the contract and see if there's a provision for looking at potential compensation, if that's the pleasure of the board. But the rules are clearly established in the agreement that such a request was to be received by February 15th, and we received it after that date.
I guess my take on that is and I appreciate that, and I think we need to uphold our rules and our contractual issues as often as we can. But given the context of what this partnership is providing and what we just approved, that in essence we have set ourselves up for the future all the way to 2040, that's worth something to this community. And the relationship between this authority and both Recology and Hambro, WSG, and Julindra. I mean, we have a very unique partnership that is very productive. And if there's a way to look into this contract to be able to do this, I would absolutely like to see us be able to do that. But that's just my...
I would I don't know if that's a motion or not. I seconded, I couldn't have said it any better myself. I'd like to see us explore it.
I don't think we need a motion. I think we need to direct staff to bring it back on the next, have it agendized on the, have it on the agenda for discussion.
I'll treat that as consensus direction.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. We are now doing
5.2.
5.2.
Change order 23, this essentially enacts the changes based on CPI and the disposal changes that were just discussed, the 58 cents per ton. And the really big news, while we're discussing recycling, this is a positive bit, because starting in August 1, when this change order becomes effective, we will start recycling textiles at the Delaware County Transfer Station for the first time. And the rate will be $75 and some change. Let me, sorry. Sorry about this. Okay, $75.15 per ton, which is a savings of $68.89 per ton, because at this point we can't recycle textiles. They're all just taken for disposal. Recyclable textiles will include clean and dry clothing, linens, blankets, towels, curtains, and separately bagged shoes. Shoes can include high heels, slippers, dress shoes, boots, tennis shoes, flip-flops, and similar. Materials that will not be accepted as recyclable textiles will include wet, dirty, or moldy items, bed pillows, and bags of textiles that include excluded items, such as unbagged shoes. So you can't just bag up all your clothing and put your shoes in there and consider it good. That's going to all be trash in that case. Also exclude are mattress covers, undergarments, medical boots or braces, and shoes with major holes. But for people who are interested in recycling clothing and textiles, a service that we haven't had before, we'll be able to start that on August 1st. So that's part of this change order. So staff recommend approval of this change order?
Any discussion? Any public discussion? Bring it back to the board. Discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll move, I'll make a motion that we approve the change order.
Change order number 23?
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the transfer station operations change order number 23 by initiating a textile recycling program. Will you poll the vote, please?
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa,
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure.
Yes. Okay, moving on to the next item, 6.1.
6.1 is the rate ordinance, 2016-01, increasing disposal rate components at the Delaware County Transfer Station and establishing a rate for improper disposal for the Gasky and Klamath transfer stations. So in addition to the issues that we've already discussed, including the textile recycling, there is another new rate that will be established under the rate ordinance before you, and that is a fee for improper disposal. One of the things that our administrative assistant, Lisa Babcock, has pointed out is that when bulky items are disposed of in Gasky and Klamath, those items are paid for as a per unit fee at each of those facilities. And then when they come into the transfer station, they're mixed in with the solid waste. So that's unloaded and paid for as solid waste. Plus, we get a count off the floor of all the bulky items that were placed in that bin. So we're paying twice for every bulky item coming from Gasky or Klamath. So what we're proposing to do is establish a separate bin just for bulky items in Gasky and Klamath, so that then when those items come in, we just pay for the bulky item once, and we don't pay for the solid waste fee as well. And then for the other bin, it's all solid waste, it's all mixed solid waste, we're fine paying that solid waste. The problem comes when the bulky items are placed in the trash bin or the trash is placed in the bulky item bin. And so we are suggesting that we create an improper disposal fee so that if a customer is unable to follow the directions of the gate attendant telling them the bulky item goes here, the trash goes here, if they fail to follow those directions, then there's an extra charge of $13. So again, it's a real cost in that if it's improperly disposed, it absolutely costs this agency money, and that's the reason for the justified fee, but it is a new fee.
Any public comment? Bring it back to the board.
What attempt have we made to educate these two areas?
What?
What attempt have we made to educate these two areas?
Well, we haven't had a separate bin for the bulky items. We haven't established that program. So at this point, all the bulky items go in
So
with the
it's-
trash, so
It's our fault?
it's a program we have not implemented. We can always improve. This is one of the improvements.
My guess is there won't be a lot of people paying the $13 fee because there's an attendant that's going to say the couch needs to go over there.
We've
Trash
also
needs to
bought little stands like this, and we'll have rope in front of them. So essentially, we'll have to move them out of the way along with the signs, so that we'll try to make it as obvious as possible that, and make it hard, because we're not trying to assess this fee on customers. It's more a matter, we want to make sure that people are properly separating the materials, because if they don't, it costs us money.
You can put it in the right place, or you can put it in the wrong place and pay me
pay.
to put it in the right place.
That's more or less it, right?
That's a good sign to have up there.
That's right.
Yeah, just have that big sign right up there in front.
So, what's your pleasure?
Do we really need an ordinance to do this?
Yeah, 'cause
And anytime there's a new rate, it requires an ordinance. So the disposal fee increase from Oregon state law was the main thing that triggered the need for a rate ordinance. But our legal counsel is very clear that a new rate requires a new rate ordinance.
We've got to come back to our boards. Because does this have to, still have to come back to then the city and the county then?
Yes. At this, until the JPA is changed, it does, and so.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2016-01, an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, increasing disposal rate components and establishing rates for textile recycling and improper disposal for the Gasky and Klamath transfer stations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Pull the vote, please.
Commissioner Howard,
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Naffa,
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
And you abstained, Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, 6.2.
6.2 is approval of the budget or discussion and possible action regarding the authority budget for next fiscal year. If I could have the PowerPoint brought up. This is a PowerPoint that probably each of you have seen, except for perhaps Mr. Naffa, because it's the same one that I brought to the City Council and the Board of Supervisors. But essentially, those are the authority responsibilities. This shows that our rates, even after these budget, if this budget is approved and with all of the change orders and the rate ordinance, our rates will remain the lowest for solid waste facilities in the Curry, Humboldt, and Del Norte County regions. This is our approval process for the budget. So one of the things that we need to do is we will need to publish this in the paper and set a public hearing for final adoption on June 21st. There's our org chart. So this is a look at our overall revenues. This is including the reports from Recology Del Norte, which are for fiscal year 14-15. So these are years past. But you can see that Recology is about 57% of the solid waste dollars spent in Del Norte County. Hambros is about 25%, and the Solid Waste Authority is 18%. Previously, the authority's percentage has been reported as slightly lower, around 14%. The reason for the increase is that it seemed more appropriate to me that the franchise fees paid by Recology, which become part of the authority's budget, be counted as authority revenue. But the reason why that and all of that pie chart is on that orange plate is that, of course, the authority is responsible for the administration of both the contract for Recology and the contract for Hambro WSG. So there have been previous discussions about hoping that there could be more privatization in this system, but you can see that the bulk of the solid waste dollars have already been privatized. Looking at authority revenues, you can see that approximately 2/3 of the authority's revenues go to pay Hambros for their transfer station operations services, and I'm glad that contract has been extended and they'll continue to provide good service for us. Then you can see the authority's portion of the service fees at the Delaware County Transfer Station. The green slice is the franchise fees from projected to come from Recology in the coming year, and the last one is grants and other sources of income. Looking at our expenses, again, you'll see approximately 2/3 of our expenses go to pay Hambros for their operations. $591,000 goes for salaries and benefits, and that does include the negotiated changes under the MOU that has been current negotiated with the union. Then we have the transfer station loan payments, and depreciation is a funded expense for Joint Powers Authority, so that's an actual cash expense that goes to build up our cash balance at the end of the year. Then we have the interfund cost plan. That's paying the county for personnel and auditing services. And this is the first year that the interfund cost plan is actually exceeding our permit fees, which are the next amount. So that's $57,000. That is also projected to have a higher level of, we may be able to bring that down if the Regional Water Quality Control Board agrees. Then we have the household hazardous waste events, cost for well monitoring, other post-employment benefits, and other expenses. And I think we can, you can close that PowerPoint now. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the budget? Did the Budget Committee, the ad hoc, meet?
Unfortunately, Mr. Howard was not able to attend, but Mr. Naffa did attend with Clinton Shad and Treasurer Rich Taylor, and we did go over the budget and discussed a variety of things, including the interfund cost plan. The interfund cost plan is reported to the state, and so they do review the basis for those numbers, but it is a cost that is spread out throughout county departments, and the solid waste is included in that spreading of those costs. And one of the significant things that we learned in that discussion was that that was based on their documented expenses from 2 years prior. And so, for example, one of the questions in my mind as we were having these discussions was our recent union negotiations where we had to hire an additional contractor, Janine Galatioto, to provide the services that the previous personnel administrator would have. But because that person was no longer in that position, we had to hire a contractor, but we didn't get a reduction in the payments that we needed to make to the county. However, we will, in that vacant position reduced our overall expenses for that particular fiscal year, and so 2 fiscal years afterwards, then our interfund cost plan will be reduced accordingly. So in some ways, it seems about as fair as a system can be for what they do, but it is certainly anytime any expense goes up by more than $10,000, you pay attention to it.
Well,
I have a question. At that meeting, we were talking about the iBank interest rate. Were you able to find out anything about that?
Really excellent question, and thank you so much for bringing that up. So what that question was about was the infrastructure bank through which we have the loan for the construction of the transfer station, which we pay off each year, is currently at a 3.3% interest rate. And I did, upon Mr. Naffa's encouragement, contact them to see if there was a possibility of refinancing, to see if we might be able to get a lower rate. And they were really clear that's not what they do. And so if we want to look at refinancing that, it would not be through the iBank, but it would be through another entity. We would have to pay off that loan, and it would be a more complicated equation.
what's the note right now?
I'd have to look it up. I don't have that in front of me.
So I think that's a piece of the budget dialogue that's never been really discussed, and that's when solid waste opened its doors, it was $1.2 million or $1.5 million in the hole. So it has never been, the city and the county didn't take that responsibility on, and of the landfill. So we were in the hole to begin with. But I'm hoping that maybe the ad hoc committee would be willing to still look at this budget more, and in particular, the 30490 line that deals with the depreciation fund, the $98,000. Because I'm not sure how we spend out on that, and I'm worried about the floor, that money's going to get locked in there. And I'm also questioned because I looked at another JPA, and they don't have that line. So I'm not sure why it's imposed here and not on it, and I didn't have time to look at special districts. But they may too not have that line, and if that's the case, we need to figure out and have maybe a side letter from the auditor on how we're going to spend that. Because my conversation with him was that that's not the money that we could use for the floor. And so that confuses me because the floor has depreciated and we need to fix it. So it's just a question that I don't have time to answer, and I think maybe if you guys could just meet and talk with Clint and Ted and maybe have it figured out, because we're going to need the floor sooner than later. So we need action to accept the draft authority budget and schedule a public hearing for June 21st.
I would like to follow up a little bit, and I failed as a solid waste member in getting to this commission meeting.
You get to come back again.
Not happy about it.
You get to
Not happy
strike
about
out
it,
every now and
but life
again.
often gets in the way. I'm glad Commissioner Noffa was able to attend and ask some pertinent questions. And I want to reflect back on the question that you just asked the director. You know, typically I think about these things simplistically in paying down a house per se. And we're paying down a fairly large loan over time. Typically, if we have additional cash flow, most smart, prudent homeowners put additional cash flow to reduce the amount of time essentially on that loan. Do we have that opportunity within our budget? Do we have the room within our budget to do something like that, to reduce the amount of time? Does that knock off?
It's something we could discuss, but it's the short answer is that it would be challenging because of the very issues that are being raised about, for instance, this transfer station floor repair. One of the reasons why Mr. Shad has said that that fund balance is not necessarily entirely available is because of the financial hole that the authority started in. We had the liabilities associated with the landfill, and we had the liabilities associated with the note on the transfer station. So we started in about a $7 million hole and have been slowly digging ourselves out. And part of what Mr. Shad has said is that essentially we need to get into closer to a net positive position before that cash balance is actually available. And all I could say was that that issue would be something we need to talk about further and explore in more depth, because the transfer station floor will need repair, certainly within the next 2 years, and we need to have a strategy by which we can use the authority's resources to effect that repair. So it's not a done discussion, but it's also not something that has an obvious resolution at this point.
What portion of our budget is debt retirement? How much are we spending on that mortgage?
It's a little over $200,000 a year in terms of just paying off the transfer station note. But as I understood Mr. Howard's question, it's like a home payment where, say, your monthly note is $900 and you decide, okay, we can pay $1,100 and then we'll pay down the principal and we'll pay off the note sooner, which is good financial management. Part of the challenge of this agency and how it's different from a household is that we need to have the cash balance available because that is part of how we demonstrate we have the resources necessary to address an urgent situation, say at the landfill, which is a responsibility of this agency. So for instance, we couldn't pay down using our cash balance, our note, so that it's much less, and then not have a cash balance to address that potential liability.
Who's our note with?
It's with the infrastructure bank, but it's a complicated relationship in that technically the county has the note with the infrastructure bank, and then we pay the county so that they can pay the note and they get a small financing
So the
charge.
county could make that extra payment.
Could the county negotiate, what's our rate, out of curiosity?
3.34%, I think.
Is that standard, is that high, low, do you know?
It was very good at the time it was negotiated.
Still pretty good.
But that's what it is now, and will remain that until we change financing.
Right,
Or
and
remove the debt?
Or, yes, right.
I was concerned about the rate because of the fact that consumer loans, people can get loans at that rate. So we should be able to get a much better rate.
That's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
too.
I think it hurts to explore it.
That's why I'm thinking it doesn't hurt to ask. I thought you were going down the right path, but
I think in order to get, if we really wanted to go again with iBank, we would have to have the county pay off the note and then reapply for a note if they're offering lower rates. And it's a really complex process.
could we refinance with another bank?
Probably. Beneficial Bank. They might be interested because they do environmentally sensitive stuff all the time at very low rates.
This whole area of discussion would need a lot more research
Oh, yeah.
for me to give you coherent answers to it.
Good answer.
I did want to interject one other point that we discussed at that budget meeting, is that if we're able to get a good interest rate with the refinancing, that we could actually put the transfer station floor as part of that new loan.
That's a great idea.
That'll take some-
If the board, in the coming months, we have a lot on our plate to try to deal with, and there are limitations. We still only have 2 staff to work on these kinds of things, plus our treasurer controller, which is a contractor, and the more hours he spends, the more that costs. So if this is a priority of the board, we can certainly pursue it, but I would recommend that we not pursue it for the next couple months at least, because we do have a number of things that are going on right now.
Is this something the county could pursue?
Possibly, yeah. I think
Yes,
that's
and I'd
who
be
did
happy
the-
to work with the county auditor if that office has time to
That's who
look
did the
at a
iBank loan
possibility.
originally.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know.
just going back on what Mr. Napa said, I mean, if we could refinance that and all of a sudden our debt payment goes from 202,000 to 212,000, but in doing that, we also have equity money that we can replace that floor. I realize we're busy, but that would be a huge benefit to the long-term future of the authority.
I
So
agree.
And not to try to add stuff, I understand what you're saying, but I just think that that's a great exploration to make, to see whether or not that's something we can do.
And I think it's worthwhile as well. I'm not in any way saying that this isn't worth pursuing.
Yeah, no, I know.
You just don't have to go on vacation for a couple months, right?
I'm leaving tomorrow.
So we have
I
a
can get
motion on
leave.
or did we vote already on the budget?
No, we didn't vote yet. We didn't even get a motion.
There's no motion yet.
Okay, any public comment on the budget? So is there a motion to approve the draft authority budget and schedule a hearing for June 21st at 2016 for final adoption?
One more question, Chair, sorry. Can we amend the budget after it's adopted?
Yes, in fact, that's what budget transfers are.
So if something like this came up,
Sure. Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed draft budget for 16-17 and set a public hearing for June 21st, 2016 for final adoption.
Second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the draft authority budget and schedule the public hearing for June 21st for final adoption. Poll vote, please.
Commissioner Napa?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner McClure?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
I'd like to thank the commissioners at this time for your continued focused attention on all these detailed issues. I really do appreciate it. It's not easy being an elected official. So the next item is discussion and possible action regarding the second amended joint powers agreement.
Sorry.
It's okay. I didn't know that was a laugh line. When the second amended joint powers agreement was presented to the Board of Supervisors, Chair Hemmingson had a number of specific text changes that he was recommending, and rather than bring it to the city and see if they could approve the same text changes, Commissioner McClure made it clear that she would like it to come back to this board so that you could approve the text changes before we brought it to the city and the county for their further consideration. So that revised second amendment is included. Probably the most substantial change was, instead of calling the county administrative officer the chief county administrative officer, it's just the county administrative officer. There was a whereas that was removed, and Mr. Hemmingson wanted to make sure that the last sentence on page 10 of section 7D was removed, saying the party's failure to attend such a hearing shall be treated as approval of the proposed budget. And as long as I have the floor, I'd like to explain the reason for that sentence and the reason for this particular issue. The concept here is that the authority's budget is presented to the city and the county for comment. It's very common that I'll present such a budget and I'll hear comments from the dais, but it's not exactly clear that those are the comments of the entire body, whether that's the Board of Supervisors or the City Council. And it's not entirely clear always what the consensus decision of that body is. And so when you just hear verbal comments, there's nothing in writing, it becomes challenging as staff to come back to try to represent the comments of the city or the county that aren't actually put in writing. So we have in our joint powers agreement essentially the requirement or the specific request that the comments be placed in writing and that a person come and represent their comments so that you have, as the authority board, an accurate understanding of what those comments are. It becomes doubly challenging when the comments are made from the dais, there's no written record, and then there's no representative from the city or the county to represent those comments. That becomes triply challenging because now I'm supposed to represent those comments accurately and you're supposed to base your decisions on my representation of those comments. You can see how it becomes a problem. In any case, that was what Mr. Hemmingson wanted removed, that essentially basically saying the comments made are the comments and whether they show up or not, those are still the comments that somehow we're supposed to respond to.
Any comment? Well, public comment? Any comments of the board? I brought this back because I felt that it was a slippery slope to change policy, to change the amendment, the agreement from the Board of Supervisors and the City of Crescent City. If they could start just doing, when we are approving this, we're going to X this out, X that out. And it also didn't have any time for public discussion in relationship to the public if they would have had a comment on it because it's being changed in a non-agenda-sized way. So those were my objections to it. I don't really have a dog in the fight in relationship to the requested changes. I think that the difficulty in the budget comments, that one's going to stay alive and well because even when you had that clause, you didn't get written statements.
Right.
So I don't know if it's a big deal.
And
Better
I
to
should
at
also
least get
mention,
written statements.
I should also mention that Supervisor Finnegan suggested that to resolve this, that we try to coordinate a joint city-county meeting to adopt this as a final action. So that was also suggested.
So
With the proposed changes to the JPA that we have already presented to both Board of Supervisors and City Council, isn't it just advisory anyway? I mean, it's not actionable items that either one, they can comment, but it's just comment. Isn't that the goal that we are having, moving towards, where the authority is responsible for its own budget? We're going to the two partners and saying, this is the budget. If you'd like to comment, provide us those comments. But we're responsible for the budget.
That's generally correct. The only addition I would add to that is that these changes make it optional for the city or the county to consider the authority's budget as to whether or not they want to make comments. So that decision would be made by the chair of the Board of Supervisors and the county administrative officer as to whether or not to put it on a Board of Supervisors agenda. Similarly, it would be decision of the city manager and the mayor whether or not to put it on the city council agenda.
And you're saying if it goes on to those bodies' agendas, then you would like to see it responded with a letter of questions and a person in response to talk back and forth with.
Only seeking clarity, yes, but that would be the best way to achieve that clarity would be to have something in writing adopted by the entire board and then presented by somebody who was from that entity talking to the authority board. And without that, then it'll be less clear or more dependent on the understanding as I'm best able to convey it to you.
If those questions did come, I think that this board has a good enough relationship with both of the elected entities that if the questions were to come, we could make a request that those questions come with it being a person who's going to talk to the board. So if it's coming from the Board of Supervisors, that Jay could come and explain what the issues were. I think that we have enough relationship. I don't think we need the language.
I guess maybe I'm just missing something. Isn't that contained in 7C that if there's specific comments, objections, additions, or deletions to the proposed budget, they're supposed to notify us in writing by the 15th of May? I mean, isn't that what we're talking about? If they have to do that, if they want any, I mean, as I read it, if you have anything that you want to say about it, get it to the authority by the 15th of May. If you don't, then we move on.
Yes, and I appreciate that you're reading that clearly, but all I can say is that in the past,
Well, you mean what it says is not what it means?
no, it's not necessarily what has happened. So maybe
Well,
those
maybe-
comments don't actually get written in writing. They get made from the dais. Nobody shows, nobody makes any comments, they haven't been adopted, and then I can tell you
I
that from
appreciate
personal
that.
experience, there have been elected officials who have not been entirely happy with the way I presented their verbal comments. So,
An elected official that's not entirely happy.
I
I guess maybe I'm just naive, but I mean, 4 of us on this authority are elected officials. If we cannot come and represent our representative boards accurately, that shouldn't be your fault. That should be our fault. That's just my opinion. If we are here by virtue of the fact, 4 of us, that we are on the Board of Supervisors or the City Council, we should be able to accurately articulate anything that was not put in writing so that you don't have to try to interpret anything other than what is given to you in writing. And I think that we can work pretty clearly from this dais in this authority with our director. I would hope.
I would think on top of that, you know, our respective boards would have our representatives that are on this board speak for them to come back with a letter. So any comments should be coming back through our representatives that are on this board. And I think maybe that's the language we need in there, as opposed to that, and it has to be a consensus from each of the boards before it goes back, because it can't just be one individual where all of a sudden, you didn't get their words correct on there. I don't think that should be the case at all, because it just makes more hassle for you. So I would make the language a little stronger and say that it has to be a letter of consensus written that comes back through the representatives that are on the Solid Waste Management Authority Board.
I'm trying to recall our arguments, and I was kind of agreeing with Chair McClure's comments earlier, nodding my head. I don't think the language needs to be in there. I mean, we've got city council meetings and we have board of supervisors meetings that are taped. We could get a pretty good observation based on reviewing those tapes, what the intent of that discussion was, whether it was written or not. But I think it behooves any of us sitting as an elected official on either of those two bodies, if a discussion like that were to occur, that those elected officials sitting on those two bodies would do exactly as Chair McClure stated. We'd request that the CAO or the city manager attend to verbalize those comments in written form, but I don't necessarily believe we need it written as such in here.
But keep the March 15th deadline?
Yeah, it's currently stated as
It's May 15th.
May 15th.
is number 7C.
I don't have any problem with the changes. I think that, personally, I think the responsibility falls back to us and our representative boards to do a better job of certainly of communicating more effectively. I would look at myself as a Solid Waste Management Authority Commissioner. How well do I communicate back to the city council? If I do a better job of communicating, or Mayor Gaston and I do a better job of communicating there, so that there is a regular engagement of this whole process, there's going to be a lot less ambiguous things that you have to try to interpret from us. And I just don't think that, and while you could go back and watch the tapes, you should not have to go back and watch tapes to try to figure out what we were saying. If we can't be more succinct than that, then maybe we're in the wrong chairs. But sorry,
And there should be a
have to do that.
procedure that is followed
Yeah.
by both boards equally.
Agreed. Part of the challenge is that, just as we've had this healthy and good discussion here now, it becomes kind of a lead weight to say at the end, and if we don't have those comments in writing, they don't count.
I think that's absolutely true. I think if it's that important, as Mr. Gastineau said, if it's that important that there's a consensus of either one of our boards feel strongly about something, then put it in writing and get it here by May 15th. If one council member or one commissioner has got this idea of how they're going to fix everything, then we have a responsibility of our individual boards to mitigate those kind of side conversations and only come with whatever is either an actual vote or a consensus. That's the only fair way for the authority to try to do its business. That's my opinion. And I think that the language that's in here allows for that with these changes, and I'm fine with
Is that a motion?
it. I don't even know where we start with the,
We are in 6-3.
with the,
That's with the amendments as shown on this current draft that are crossed out?
Yes,
I'd
this
second
is
that
a red line version, so
Yep.
additional text and
I've
remove
got the
text.
black and white red line version.
black and white.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to, regarding the Second Amendment Joint Powers Agreement between the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte, creating the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, and the motion is for the Joint Powers Agreement as presented.
The suggested revisions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my motion. Thank you.
Further discussion? We probably should poll the vote on this one.
Commissioner Gastineau.
Yes.
Commissioner McClure.
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to 6.4.
And I'd like to bring Kayleen Warner up. This is a brief status report of some of the changes regarding our grants for fiscal year 16-17. Kathy?
All right. Historically, the GPA has applied for, implemented, and managed our 2 grants with CalRecycle. We have a used oil grant in the amount of $15,000, $5,000 that is allocated to the city, and $10,000 to the county. Same split for our beverage container recycling programs. The staff memo sort of outlines some of the activities that those funds have been used for, along with some of the proposed new activities that I'm currently working on. Recently, however, CalRecycle changed the process for the beverage container program. The used oil one does remain the same. So what you have before you in the staff report is the resolution that will be going forward to the County Board of Supervisors May 24th, whereby the county will be designated as the lead agency, no longer the GPA, although we do propose to continue doing the work, kind of behind the scenes with the county out front as the signatory authority. So we wanted to bring this before you so that you have a chance to be familiar with it before it comes before you again, May 24th. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this.
Questions? Public? I'll bring it back to the board. Is the county, are you in communication with someone that, yes, it's coming on the 24th, and yes, we want to be the signatory?
So far, I've had no negative feedback, all positive, so.
Perfect.
We've also put forth to the city a request to do a letter of authorization because they will be a partner in the regional program. So.
I'm ready to sign.
Okay. Any,
My board says so.
okay. So we don't really need to take action. This is just for information.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, this brings us to closed session. And do we anticipate action out of closed session?
Yes, we do anticipate some action to report.
So that would be for the public. If you want to stick around here, we'll report it out, but that was kind of a brutal meeting.